My name is Blake Miller, and at 34, I built a real estate empire from scratch while my family watched from the sidelines, never believing I would amount to anything. Last summer, they planned a luxury vacation and deliberately excluded me from the booking. What they never realized was that the exclusive Hawaiian resort they chose was actually mine. The look on their faces when they discovered this truth was worth every moment of doubt they ever cast my way. Before I dive into how I turned the tables on my family, let me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories about standing up for yourself when nobody else will. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Seattle, where expectations were as predictable as the rain. My family consisted of my mother Patricia, always concerned with appearances, my father Ronald, a bank manager who measured success by job security, my older sister Jessica, the golden child with perfect grades, and my younger brother Marcus, the athletic star. Then there was me, the dreamer, the risk-taker, the one who never quite fit the mold. From early on, I felt like the odd one out, while my siblings received praise for following the prescribed path. My entrepreneurial ideas were met with skepticism. When I was 12, I started a lawn care business in our neighborhood. Instead of encouragement, my father lectured me about focusing on school. "Businesses are for grown-ups, Blake," he would say, dismissing my initiative with a wave of his hand. Family gatherings became a showcase for everyone but me. Jessica would be praised for her academic achievements, Marcus for his athletic trophies. When it came to my turn, the conversation would quickly shift to dessert or the weather. I still remember my 16th birthday when my parents threw a small party. The conversation centered around Jessica getting accepted to Stanford and Marcus making varsity as a freshman. My recent win at a regional business competition went unmentioned. "Blake just has different interests," my mother would explain to relatives. As if my passion for business was an unfortunate phase I would eventually outgrow. By high school, the pattern was firmly established. My family had decided who I was, the unreliable one with impractical dreams. When I started talking about real estate and investment strategies I had researched, my father would laugh. "Focus on getting a stable job first, son. Not everyone is cut out for business." The breaking point came when I was 19. I had been accepted to Washington State University, but had also been offered an internship with a local real estate developer. I wanted to do both, study business while getting practical experience. My father confronted me in our living room, waving my acceptance letter. "You need to focus on school full-time. This real estate nonsense is just a distraction," he insisted. "It's not nonsense, Dad. It's my future," I replied, standing my ground for perhaps the first time. The argument escalated until he delivered the ultimatum that would change my life. "As long as you live under my roof, you'll follow my plan for your education." I moved out the next day. With barely enough savings for first month's rent on a tiny apartment, I embarked on my journey. I worked 3 jobs: morning shifts at a coffee shop, evening shifts at a restaurant, and weekend work for a real estate agent doing open houses. Meanwhile, I took classes at community college, transferring later to complete my business degree. Those years were brutally difficult. There were nights I could barely afford ramen noodles. My family checked in occasionally, their calls filled with subtle reminders that I could come home if I got realistic about my future. My first attempt at flipping a house was a disaster. I had scraped together enough for a down payment on a foreclosure property, but underestimated renovation costs. When I had to sell at a loss, my father didn't hesitate to remind me at Thanksgiving dinner. "This is why we worried about you, Blake. Not everyone has what it takes to succeed in business," he said, passing the mashed potatoes as if he hadn't just undermined me in front of everyone. My mother patted my hand. "There's no shame in a regular job, dear," Jessica, now working at a prestigious law firm, added. "My firm is always hiring in the mail room if you need something stable." Each failure became evidence in their case against my chosen path. When I started a property management company that struggled to find clients, my family saw it as confirmation of their doubts. When I missed Marcus's college graduation because I was working 3 jobs to recover from a bad investment, it became proof that my priorities were wrong. By my mid-20s, family gatherings had become exercises in endurance. I would sit through subtle digs about my still finding myself, while my siblings discussed promotions and bonuses. My parents would introduce Jessica as our daughter, the attorney, and Marcus as our son, the financial analyst. I was simply our son, Blake. Despite this, I maintained contact. Weekly calls to my mother. Birthday cards for everyone. Appearances at major holidays. The connection was strained but intact. I wanted to prove them wrong, not cut them off completely. I held on to the hope that someday they would see me, really see me, and what I was building. Little did they know that while they were busy dismissing my dreams, I was laying the foundation for a success that would surpass anything they could imagine. And that their failure to believe in me would eventually lead to a moment of reckoning none of them saw coming. My turning point came after that devastating first flip. With my savings depleted and my confidence shaken, I was close to giving up. I was sitting in a local coffee shop, reviewing what went wrong, when an older gentleman at the next table noticed my property worksheets. "First flip didn't go as planned?" he asked. That man was Warren Keller, a retired real estate developer who had built half the commercial properties in downtown Seattle. Over a 3-hour conversation, he dissected my mistakes with the precision of a surgeon. Instead of condemning my failure, he treated it as a necessary education. "You paid your tuition to the real world of real estate," Warren said. "The question is, did you learn enough to make it worth the cost?" Warren became my mentor, meeting weekly to guide my next steps. Under his tutelage, I started smaller, finding undervalued properties that needed minimal renovations. My second flip netted a modest profit of $15,000. The third brought in $22,000. By my fourth project, I had established a system that worked. "The key is knowing your numbers cold," Warren advised. "Most people fail because they let emotion override math." I lived by those words, spending evenings analyzing market trends and property values while my friends were out socializing. My social life became virtually non-existent, but my portfolio started growing. By 27, I had successfully flipped 12 properties and begun keeping some as rentals to build passive income. When I called my parents with news of my growing business, the response was lukewarm. "That's nice, dear, but is it stable?" my mother asked. My father added, "Just make sure you're putting money aside for when things slow down." Their skepticism only fueled my determination. I expanded from residential to small commercial properties, converting an old warehouse into office spaces that filled with tenants before construction was even completed. The project doubled my net worth overnight. I formed Horizon Properties LLC at 29, bringing on 2 partners who shared my vision for finding underutilized properties with potential. We raised capital from investors who had watched my consistent success, allowing us to take on larger projects. Our company grew from 3 people working out of my apartment to 15 employees in a downtown office. Throughout this growth, my family remained distant spectators. At Christmas gatherings, they would ask perfunctory questions about that property thing you do, never really understanding the scale of what I was building. When I arrived at my parents' anniversary party in a new Tesla, my father commented that leasing luxury cars was financially irresponsible. I didn't bother explaining that I had purchased it outright. The opportunity that changed everything came through Warren's network. A once prestigious resort on Maui's northwestern shore had fallen into disrepair under mismanagement. The owners were looking to sell quickly, and the price reflected the property's deteriorated condition. I flew to Hawaii to inspect the resort personally. The Makana Bay Resort had spectacular bones, prime oceanfront location, stunning architecture, but needed a complete overhaul. Staff morale was low, facilities were outdated, and its reputation had suffered. Where others saw problems, I saw potential. After 2 weeks of intense negotiation and due diligence, I made an offer that was accepted. Convincing my partners and investors took all my persuasive abilities and a comprehensive revival plan. This was by far our biggest undertaking, a $28 million acquisition with another $15 million budgeted for renovations. The next 18 months were the most challenging of my career. I relocated temporarily to Maui, overseeing every aspect of the transformation. We renovated all 212 rooms, redesigned the restaurants, rebuilt the pool complex, and revamped the spa. I personally interviewed key staff, bringing in a management team with experience in luxury hospitality. We rebranded as the Honu Bay Resort, drawing on the Hawaiian sea turtle as a symbol of longevity and good fortune. The grand reopening attracted coverage in travel magazines and luxury publications. Bookings exceeded projections within the first quarter. By the second year, we had achieved 5-star status and were hosting celebrities and executives seeking discreet luxury. The success of Honu Bay became the cornerstone of Horizon Properties' expansion into the hospitality sector. We acquired 2 more struggling resorts, one in Key West and another in Colorado, applying the same revival strategy with similar results. While I never hid my ownership of these properties, I didn't advertise it either. My name appeared in press releases as CEO of Horizon Properties, but I stayed out of promotional materials. The success was about the properties and our team, not my personal brand. By my 34th birthday, my net worth had crossed into 8 figures. I had moved back to Seattle, purchasing a penthouse overlooking Puget Sound. My company now employed over 100 people across our various properties and development projects. Through it all, my family's perception remained largely unchanged. When I mentioned during a phone call that I was flying to Maui to check on business interests, my mother said, "That sounds like a vacation disguised as work to me." My father still periodically sent me job listings for corporate positions with good benefits. Their inability to recognize my success wasn't for lack of evidence. It was a failure of imagination. They simply couldn't reconcile the son they had dismissed with the businessman I had become. And perhaps part of me was still waiting for the validation I had sought since childhood, the acknowledgement that I had been right to follow my own path. That validation would never come voluntarily. But circumstances were about to create an opportunity for truth that none of us could have anticipated, least of all my unsuspecting family as they planned their Hawaiian vacation. The group text came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was in a meeting with investors. My phone lit up repeatedly with notifications as my extended family discussed the reunion trip. I checked it later to discover an excited conversation about planning a family gathering in Hawaii. "Mom and Dad's 40th anniversary deserves something special," Jessica had written, initiating the thread. "Hawaii would be perfect. They've always wanted to go back there," Marcus replied. My cousins, aunts, and uncles all chimed in with enthusiastic approval. Plans started forming rapidly, discussions about which island to visit, what activities to plan, and potential accommodations. I felt a surge of excitement. Despite our complicated relationship, I loved my family and welcomed the chance to reconnect in a positive setting. Perhaps seeing me in my element, successful and confident, would finally bridge the gap between us. "This sounds great," I texted. "I have some connections in Hawaii that might be helpful for accommodations." The group chat fell silent for nearly 20 minutes after my message. Then Jessica replied, "We're still just brainstorming at this point. Nothing definite yet." The conversation resumed but shifted noticeably. When I suggested specific dates that would work for me, the responses became vague. "We're looking at several options," my aunt wrote. When I offered to research activities, Marcus responded, "Got it covered, bro." As planning progressed over the following weeks, I noticed I was receiving fewer notifications. Checking the thread revealed conversations happening without me, as if there was a separate chat I wasn't included in. When I directly asked about dates and accommodation details, my mother replied privately rather than in the group. "We're thinking about July, but nothing's settled," she texted. "Don't worry about accommodations. Your father has points with the hotel chain we can use." My suspicions grew when my cousin Ryan accidentally texted me instead of Marcus. "Confirmed with everyone for July 15th to 22nd. Blake mentioned he might be in Asia then for work, so timing works perfect." I stared at the message, confused. I had never mentioned being in Asia. In fact, I had clearly indicated my availability in July. The realization dawned slowly. They were deliberately planning around me, not with me. I called my mother directly, determined to understand what was happening. "Mom, I'm confused about the Hawaii trip. The dates seem to be set for July 15th to 22nd, but no one informed me directly." A pause. "Oh, well, yes. That's when most people could make it," she said hesitantly. "I told everyone I was available then. Why did Ryan think I'd be in Asia?" Another pause. "Well, honey, we weren't sure you could afford it right now. These luxury resorts are very expensive, and we know your business has ups and downs. We didn't want you to feel pressured." The excuse was so transparent it was almost insulting. My mother knew very well that I wasn't struggling financially. I had sent them generous gift cards for their last anniversary. "Where are you all staying?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Some place called Honu Bay on Maui. Your father found a group discount." My heart skipped a beat. They had unknowingly chosen my resort. The irony would have been amusing if it hadn't been so painful. "I see," I said carefully. "And was there a reason no one thought to include me in the actual planning?" "Blake, sweetie," my mother said with practiced patience, "you're so busy with your projects. And the rooms are all booked now. We're at capacity with the family discount. Maybe you can join us for part of the time? There might be other accommodations nearby." The message was clear. I was an afterthought, not a priority. The family reunion was happening with or without me, preferably without. After hanging up, I sat in my office overlooking the Seattle skyline, feeling like that excluded teenager all over again. Decades of success, and nothing had changed in their perception of me. I was still the outsider. Still not quite worthy of full inclusion in the family narrative. That evening, I poured myself a scotch and contemplated my options. I could confront them directly, demand inclusion, and risk creating family drama before their anniversary celebration. I could accept the exclusion, staying away as they clearly preferred. Or I could find another way to address this pattern that had persisted throughout my life. As I considered the situation, a plan began forming in my mind. They had unwittingly chosen my resort, a place where I was not just a guest but the owner, where the staff knew me and respected me, where I had created something remarkable from nothing. Perhaps it was time for my family to finally see who I had become. Not through my words, which they had always dismissed, but through incontrovertible evidence they couldn't ignore. I sent a brief message to the family chat. "Sorry I won't be able to join you all for the full Hawaii trip. Enjoy Honu Bay. I've heard it's beautiful this time of year." Jessica replied with a thumbs-up emoji. My mother sent a private text. "We'll miss you, but we understand. We'll take lots of pictures." Little did they know, I would be there to witness every moment of their vacation, just not in the way any of them expected. The wheels of my plan started turning immediately. I called Michael Kealoha, the general manager of Honu Bay Resort, who had been with me since the renovation. "Michael, I need some information about a reservation," I said after exchanging pleasantries. "It should be under the name Miller, arriving July 15th. "Let me check, Mr. Miller," he replied. After a brief pause. "Yes, I have it here. Ronald Miller, party of 14. 5 rooms booked for 7 nights. They requested ocean view rooms but booked our standard tier. They're using a travel agency group discount. 14 people." My entire extended family, minus me. The confirmation stung, but also strengthened my resolve. I'd like you to keep their reservation exactly as is, I instructed. Don't upgrade them automatically as you might normally do for large groups. I'll be coming to the resort during their stay, but I don't want them to know in advance. Understood, sir. Michael replied, professional as always. Will you be staying in your usual suite? Yes, but keep it off the books. As far as the staff is concerned, I'm there for a routine inspection. Only you and the necessary department heads should know. Over the next few weeks, I rearranged my schedule, delegating projects and postponing meetings to free up the week of July 15th to 22nd. I reviewed the resort's booking details, noting which rooms my family would occupy and their proximity to each other. I studied the activities they had pre-booked through the resort: a luau dinner, a snorkeling excursion, spa appointments. I arranged for my private jet to fly me to Maui on July 14th, a day before their arrival. During the flight, I fine-tuned my approach. This wasn't about embarrassing them or creating a scene. This was about finally breaking through the perception they had maintained despite all evidence to the contrary. Upon landing in Maui, I was greeted by Michael and driven directly to the resort. We walked the grounds together, ostensibly conducting an inspection while actually preparing for my family's arrival. The Miller party will be checking in around 2 p.m. tomorrow, Michael confirmed. I've arranged for Kailani to handle their check-in personally. Kailani was our front desk manager. Discreet and professional. Perfect, I nodded. I want to observe their arrival from somewhere unobtrusive. Michael showed me to a security office with monitors displaying the lobby and entrance. You can watch from here without being seen. I'll have a radio so you can communicate with me if needed. That night, I stayed in my owner's suite. A spectacular 3-bedroom accommodation on the top floor with panoramic ocean views. I stood on the balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Reflecting on how far I had come from that determined 19-year-old who had left home with almost nothing. The next day, I positioned myself in the security office shortly before their scheduled arrival. My heart raced as I watched the lobby cameras. At 2:17 p.m., they began filing in, my parents leading the group. Followed by Jessica with her husband and 2 children, Marcus and his fiancée, my 2 aunts and uncles, and 3 cousins with their spouses. They looked excited, dressed in colorful vacation attire, pointing out features of the lobby to each other. My father approached the front desk with an air of importance I recognized from childhood, the manner he adopted when he wanted to impress. From the security monitor, I watched Kailani greet them warmly. Through the microphone feed, I could hear most of their exchange. "Welcome to Honu Bay Resort, Mr. Miller," she said. "We have your party's 5 rooms ready. You'll be in our garden view wing as reserved." My father frowned slightly. "We requested ocean view rooms when we booked." Kailani checked her computer. "I apologize, sir, but our records show you booked our standard garden view rooms through the travel agency special. The ocean view category is a different rate tier." "Well, can we upgrade now?" my father asked. "I can certainly check availability," Kailani replied professionally. After a moment, she continued. "We do have ocean view rooms available for an additional $175 per room per night." My father's expression soured. "That's highway robbery for just a view." Jessica stepped forward. "Dad, it's your anniversary trip. Let's splurge a little." My mother interjected. No. The garden view is fine. We won't be in the rooms much anyway." As they completed check-in and received their room keys, my Aunt Karen asked, "Is there a group photo spot? We want to commemorate our arrival." "Certainly," Kailani replied. "Our lobby waterfall is a popular backdrop. I'd be happy to take a photo for you." I watched as my family gathered by the waterfall, arranging themselves for the perfect photo. My mother adjusted her sun hat, my father stood proudly in the center, and everyone smiled broadly. They looked like the perfect family, complete without me. As they posed, I heard my mother say to my cousin, "It worked out for the best that Blake couldn't make it. You know how he is, always making things about himself or his business ventures. This way we can just relax." My cousin nodded. Yeah, and honestly, I'm not sure he could have afforded this place anyway. These luxury resorts aren't cheap. The casual dismissal hit harder than I expected. After all these years, nothing had changed. In their minds, I was still the struggling family member, the one who couldn't quite measure up. I watched them take several photos, laughing and adjusting positions, celebrating a family moment that deliberately excluded me. As they dispersed toward their rooms, I remained in the security office, my emotions fluctuating between hurt and determination. The stage was set. Now I just needed to choose the perfect moment to make my entrance. For the first full day of their stay, I observed from a distance. Dressed casually in sunglasses and a resort-branded cap, I blended in with other guests while keeping tabs on my family's movements. They spent the morning by the infinity pool, claimed the best cabanas, and ordered multiple rounds of expensive cocktails, all while I watched from the poolside bar. "Can you believe the service here?" I overheard my father tell my uncle. "For what we're paying, you'd expect more attention." My uncle nodded. "At least the drinks are strong." But I agree, for a supposed 5-star resort, they could be more accommodating. I sipped my water, amused by their complaints despite paying discounted rates for our least expensive rooms. Through the resort's activity scheduling system, I knew they had booked a sunset dinner at our premier oceanfront restaurant that evening. The perfect opportunity was approaching. Before their reservation, I visited the restaurant manager. "The Miller party at 7 p.m., I want you to give them the best table, but don't tell them it's complimentary. Just say they've received a special anniversary upgrade." That evening, I positioned myself at a corner table with a clear view of their section. Right on time, my family arrived, dressed in their resort finest. They were seated at our best table overlooking the ocean. Just as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, "Mr. and Mrs. Miller, in honor of your anniversary, the resort has upgraded your experience this evening," the manager announced, presenting them with champagne. My parents looked pleasantly surprised. "Well, that's more like it," my father said, visibly pleased by the special treatment. As they settled in, I observed their dynamics. My mother fussed over everyone's seating, Jessica dominated the conversation as usual, and Marcus showed off his wine knowledge to his fiancée. It was like watching a play I'd seen countless times before. Midway through their appetizers, I overheard a conversation that confirmed my decision to reveal myself. "Blake texted me this morning asking how Hawaii was," Jessica said, glancing at her phone. "Should I send him a photo?" My mother shook her head. "Better not. He might feel bad that he's missing out. You know how sensitive he can be." My father snorted. If he had a real career instead of jumping from one scheme to another, he could afford to join us. Marcus laughed. "Remember when he tried to tell us he was some big-shot real estate guy? Meanwhile, he couldn't even make it to Dad's retirement party because he was working. I do worry about him." My mother sighed. "At his age, he should be settled. Jessica has her law partnership, you have your finance career, but Blake is still finding himself." The casual dismissal of everything I had built made my decision clear. It was time. I waited until they had finished their main course. Then I nodded to the restaurant manager. Our prearranged signal. He approached their table. "I hope everything has been to your satisfaction," he said warmly. "The owner of the resort is in-house tonight, and likes to personally greet our special guests. He'll be by shortly to welcome you." My father straightened his posture, clearly pleased by the prospect of meeting someone important. "Well, that's very thoughtful. We're having a wonderful time." I gave them a few minutes to anticipate the meeting, watching as they tidied themselves and speculated about the owner. Then I stood up, straightened my custom-tailored blazer, and walked deliberately to their table. The recognition wasn't immediate. I approached with a professional smile, standing at the head of their table before anyone realized who I was. "Good evening. I wanted to personally welcome the Miller family to Honu Bay Resort," I said smoothly. My mother gasped first. "Blake? What are you doing here?" The table fell silent as every head turned toward me. Confusion, shock, and disbelief played across their faces. "I thought you couldn't make the trip," Jessica stammered. "Wait," my father said, his brow furrowed. "You work here?" I smiled. "Not exactly, Dad." My aunt leaned toward my mother. "Patricia. What's going on? I thought you said he wasn't supposed to come." The manager, who had been standing discreetly nearby, approached again. "Mr. Miller, is there anything else you need for your family?" My father started to respond, but the manager was looking at me. "We're fine for now, thank you, James," I replied. The confusion on their faces deepened. Marcus laughed nervously. "Blake, what is this? Did you get a job at the resort or something?" I maintained my composure, despite the adrenaline rushing through me. "No, Marcus. I don't work at the resort." I pause, letting the moment stretch. "I own it." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the ambient restaurant noise seemed to fade away as my family processed this information. That's not possible," my father finally said, his voice unnaturally high. "This place is worth millions. 38 million after our last renovation, actually." I corrected him calmly. "It's the flagship property of Horizon Hospitality Group, a division of my company." My mother's hand flew to her necklace, a nervous habit from childhood. "But you never said anything about owning a resort in Hawaii. Would you have believed me if I had?" I asked simply. No one had an answer for that. "Blake," Jessica began, her lawyer instincts kicking in, "this is quite a coincidence that we chose your resort. Is it?" I raised an eyebrow. "When you were planning this trip and deliberately excluding me, did you ever consider that the successful real estate investor in the family might have insights about Hawaiian properties?" The guilty glances exchanged around the table confirmed what I already knew. "You weren't supposed to come," my mother finally admitted quietly. "We thought it would be easier without complications." "By complications, you mean me?" I stated flatly. The family disappointment. The one still finding himself. The one who couldn't possibly afford this luxury resort, which, ironically, I own. My revelation hung in the air, undeniable and transformative. In one moment, decades of dismissal and underestimation were exposed for what they were, a profound misjudgment that said more about them than it ever did about me. The stunned silence at the table eventually broke when a waiter approached to clear their plates. My family seemed grateful for the momentary distraction, but once he left, all eyes returned to me. "Perhaps you'd all like a tour of the property," I suggested, my voice measured and professional. "Since you're here for a week, you should know what Honu Bay has to offer." "Blake," my father began, his tone shifting to one I recognized from childhood, the voice he used when trying to regain control of a situation. "You could have told us about this. We would have been proud." I met his gaze directly. "Would you? When have you ever been proud of my business endeavors, Dad? When have any of you?" I looked around the table. "Taken my career seriously?" No one answered. The weight of years of dismissal hung between us. "I should check in with the front desk," I said, breaking the uncomfortable silence. "There seems to be some confusion about your accommodations. According to our system, you specifically declined the Ocean View upgrade when booking." My father's face flushed. The travel agent must have made a mistake. "I see." I nodded. "Well, let's go sort it out." I led my shell-shocked family through the resort toward the lobby. As we walked, guests and staff greeted me with respectful nods and, "Good evening, Mr. Miller." Each acknowledgement seemed to further unsettle my family. At the front desk, Kailani smiled warmly. "Good evening, Mr. Miller. How can I help you and your family?" My father stepped forward, clearly uncomfortable but attempting to assert himself. "There seems to be some confusion about our room bookings. We thought we had reserved ocean view rooms." Kailani looked confused, checking her computer. "I don't see that request in our system, sir." "It's fine, Kailani," I intervened. "Please upgrade the Miller party to the ocean view suites in the West Wing." "Of course, Mr. Miller." "Right away." She began typing, then paused. "Would you like me to apply the owner's family rate?" Before I could answer, my father interjected. "Owner's family rate?" "Yes. Of course we should get that." I turned to him, one eyebrow raised. "Interesting that now you're claiming family status, Dad. Earlier today, I heard you tell Uncle Rob that you should be getting more attention for what you're paying." My father had the grace to look embarrassed. "Yes, Kailani, please apply the family rate," I confirmed, "and have their belongings moved to the new rooms while I give them a tour." As we walked away from the desk, my mother touched my arm tentatively. "Blake, honey, this is all very impressive, but why didn't you tell us? We're your family." "Would it have made a difference, Mom?" I asked quietly. "Would you have included me in this trip if you had known I owned the resort? Or would you have just chosen a different location to avoid having to acknowledge my success?" She didn't answer, but her eyes welled with tears. I led them through the property, pointing out features I had personally designed or selected: the infinity pool that seemed to merge with the ocean, the traditional Hawaiian art from local artists, the sustainable garden that supplied our restaurants. The original resort was failing when we acquired it, I explained as we walked. We completely reimagined the concept, focusing on authentic luxury that honors Hawaiian culture while providing world-class amenities. "This must have cost a fortune," Marcus remarked, seemingly still processing the revelation. "It was a significant investment," I acknowledged, "but it's been incredibly successful. We've been featured in Travel and Leisure, Condé Nast Traveler, and were voted Best Luxury Resort in Hawaii last year." As the tour continued, I noticed my family's demeanor changing. Initial shock gave way to something else, a dawning recognition of who I actually was, rather than who they had decided I was. We ended the tour at the entrance to my private suite. "This is where I stay when I'm on property," I said, opening the door to reveal the spectacular 3-bedroom accommodation with its panoramic views. "My God!" my father whispered as he took in the expansive space and the breathtaking vista beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Blake," Jessica began hesitantly, "why did you let us come here without telling us? You could have said something when we were planning." "You mean when you were deliberately planning around me?" I replied. "When Mom told me all the rooms were booked, when you all acted like I couldn't afford this trip, when I was explicitly excluded from family photos this morning?" My Aunt Karen had the decency to look ashamed. "We thought you were still struggling with your projects," Patricia always said. "I know what my mother always said," I interrupted. "The question is why none of you ever bothered to actually find out the truth for yourselves." An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. My father, never one to remain quiet for long, finally spoke. "Well, son, now that we understand the situation, we should discuss some possibilities. Since you own this place, I assume our stay could be complimentary? And perhaps we could be moved to the best suites? After all, what's the point of having connections if you don't use them?" The audacity was so typical of him that I almost laughed. After years of dismissing my business acumen, his first instinct was to benefit from it. "The ocean view upgrades have already been arranged," I said coolly. "But no. Your stay won't be complimentary. You'll receive the family discount, which is our cost basis for the rooms. No profit, but no loss to the resort either." "But you're the owner," he protested. "Surely you can comp the rooms." "I could," I agreed, But then I'd be a poor businessman, wouldn't I? Giving away valuable inventory during peak season? Isn't that the kind of irresponsible decision-making you always warn me about? He had no response to that. You'll find your belongings have been moved to your new rooms, I continued. The Ocean View suites are our second highest category, just below the signature suites like this one. I believe that's a fair arrangement. My mother, always the peacemaker, stepped forward. Blake, we're very proud of what you've accomplished. We had no idea. Please join us for the rest of the trip. We want to include you in all our activities. The sudden reversal was both expected and disappointing. Now you want to include me? Not because I'm your son who you missed, but because I'm the owner of this resort who can potentially provide perks. That's not fair, Jessica protested. We're just trying to make things right. Making things right would have started with believing in me, I replied quietly. Or at least not actively excluding me. I've spent my entire life being treated as less than by this family. It shouldn't take discovering that I own a luxury resort to change that perception. I walked to the door, signaling the end of our conversation. Enjoy your upgraded accommodations. I have business to attend to. As they filed out, looking various degrees of shocked, ashamed, and confused, my father lingered behind. Blake, he said, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. I may have misjudged you. May have? I repeated. He sighed. Did have. I did misjudge you. But you have to understand, the real estate business is risky. I was trying to protect you from disappointment. By ensuring I experienced it at home instead? I asked. He had no answer for that. With a nod, he joined the others, leaving me alone in my suite with the weight of decades of familial misunderstanding finally shifting, if not lifting entirely. The following morning, I maintained my distance, watching from my office as my family gathered by the pool. Their demeanor had visibly changed, subdued conversations, uncertain glances toward the main building where they knew my office was located. The revelation had clearly disrupted their vacation dynamic. Around noon, I received a text from my mother. We're having lunch at the beachfront restaurant at 1. Please join us. I considered declining but decided that avoidance solved nothing. This confrontation was long overdue. When I arrived at the restaurant, my family was already seated at the largest table. They fell silent as I approached, an unusual occurrence for our typically boisterous gatherings. Blake, my father stood, extending his hand. Thank you for joining us. I shook his hand, noting the newfound respect in his eyes, respect that shouldn't have required a multi-million-dollar resort to earn. As I sat down, my mother reached over to squeeze my arm. We've been talking all morning. We owe you an apology. Several, actually, Jessica added, uncharacteristically humble. We had no idea what you've built, Marcus said. Why didn't you ever tell us? I took a sip of water before answering. I tried, Marcus. For years I tried. Every time I mentioned a successful project or a new acquisition, it was dismissed as just another scheme or phase. After a while, I stopped trying to convince you. But surely you could have mentioned owning a resort in Hawaii. My father insisted. Would you have believed me? I asked simply. Or would you have assumed I was exaggerating or making it up entirely? The uncomfortable shifting in seats around the table gave me my answer. That's what I thought, I said quietly. We're your family, Blake, my mother said, tears welling in her eyes. We should have supported you more. Yes, you should have, I agreed. But that's not why I revealed myself yesterday. I don't need your validation anymore. I stopped seeking that years ago. What I couldn't accept was being deliberately excluded from a family gathering as if I didn't matter. We thought you wouldn't be able to afford it, my Aunt Karen admitted. Patricia said you were still struggling with your business ventures. I turned to my mother, who had the grace to look ashamed. Mom, when was the last time you actually asked me about my business? Not made assumptions, but genuinely asked? She couldn't remember. That's the problem. I continued. You all created a narrative about me when I was young, and never bothered to update it as I grew and changed. In your minds, I'm still the unreliable dreamer who can't hold down a real job. We were wrong, my father admitted. The words clearly difficult for him. Seeing all this, what you've built, I was wrong to discourage you. Coming from him, this was unprecedented. My father had never admitted being wrong about anything in my memory. I upgraded your rooms because I wanted you to experience the resort as it's meant to be experienced, I explained. The presidential suite is available for your anniversary dinner tomorrow night. I've arranged a private dining experience on the oceanfront lanai. My parents exchanged surprised glances. That's very generous, my father said. It's not about generosity, I clarified. It's about showing you who I actually am, not who you've assumed I am all these years. Over lunch, the conversation shifted. For perhaps the first time, my family asked genuine questions about my business, my journey, the challenges I'd overcome. I shared stories of the early struggles, the pivotal moments, the mentors like Warren who believed in me when my own family didn't. I had no idea you went through all that, Jessica said, seemingly seeing me clearly for the first time. You never complained, never asked for help. Would you have given it if I had? I asked. She had no answer. As the meal concluded, my father cleared his throat. Blake, we'd like you to join us for the remainder of the trip. As family, not as the resort owner. We've missed so much of your life already. The invitation was genuine, if belated. I considered it carefully before responding. I'll join you for dinners and some activities, I agreed. But I do have legitimate business to conduct while I'm here. This isn't just a vacation property for me, it's an important part of my company. Over the remaining days of their stay, I maintained a careful balance. I joined them for dinners, for a snorkeling excursion, for evening cocktails. I shared more about my business journey, and they shared updates about their lives that had been lost in our strained communication over the years. The dynamic had shifted permanently. Where once I had been the dismissed younger brother, the unsuccessful son, I was now treated with a respect that bordered on deference. It was a strange adjustment, part satisfying, part sad that it had required such dramatic circumstances to achieve. On their final evening, I hosted a private dinner for the entire family in my suite. As we enjoyed the sunset from my lanai, my father raised his glass. To Blake, he said, his voice thick with emotion, for showing us that success isn't measured by following the expected path, but by having the courage to forge your own. The toast was met with enthusiastic agreement. Later, as guests began to drift back to their rooms to pack for tomorrow's departure, my mother lingered behind. I failed you, she said simply, tears in her eyes. I should have been your biggest supporter, not your biggest doubter. Yes, I agreed, not softening the truth. But we can't change the past. We can only decide what happens going forward. And what does happen going forward? She asked hesitantly. I looked out at the ocean, considering my answer carefully. I'm not seeking revenge or holding grudges. That's not why I revealed myself here. But I am establishing boundaries. I won't pretend the past didn't happen. And I won't subject myself to being underestimated or dismissed again. She nodded, understanding. You've grown into such a strong, successful man. I wish I could take credit, but this was all you. Blake. Not all me. I corrected her. Warren believed in me when you and Dad didn't. My business partners saw my potential. My employees trust my vision. I built this success with people who recognized my value, even when my family couldn't see it. As she left, I remained on the lanai, watching the moon rise over the ocean. The resort that had been the vehicle for this long overdue confrontation stretched below me, a physical manifestation of everything I had built while my family wasn't watching. The next morning, I saw them off in the lobby, accepting hugs and promises to stay in better touch. As their shuttle pulled away, Michael approached. "Everything all right, Mr. Miller?" he asked. "Yes," I nodded. "Better than it has been in a long time, actually." In the weeks and months that followed, my relationship with my family evolved. There were more regular calls, genuine interest in my projects, invitations that weren't afterthoughts. The damage of years couldn't be repaired overnight, but a new foundation was being built. The greatest gift from this experience wasn't the validation I finally received, it was the realization that I no longer needed it. My worth wasn't determined by my family's recognition of it. Success wasn't measured by their acknowledgement. I had built something remarkable despite their doubt, not to prove them wrong, but because it was the path I was meant to follow. The view from the top isn't just about the penthouse suite. It's about seeing clearly who values you for who you are, not what you can provide them. Sometimes family has to earn their place in your life, just like you had to earn your own success. Have you ever been underestimated by those who should have believed in you most? Or discovered that your worth isn't defined by others' perceptions? Share your story in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about finding your own path, even when others can't see where it's leading. Remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's living well, with or without an ocean view.